Hello, everybody. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. I am on quite a bit later than I would have hoped to. I'm late by like 40 minutes. I'm very sick today. Like, not very sick, but enough that it's like really distorting my brain, right? I went to bed at 10 o'clock last night. I only got 3 hours of sleep. So I stayed up pretty much all night, editing my video. I ran some lanes with a friend. I took a long nap. I woke up, and when I got up, when I'm sick and I am tired, then my anxiety flares up, and I just end up being very, very unproductive. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, I wanted to go through a job board. I wanted to respond to my YouTube comments. I wanted to review one of my old streams, like, just to make sure my next set of Zelda streams is higher quality, right? Do the VOD review for my study. So eventually I got through all of that, and now we are here. So the intention was to do the patch notes right away. I wanted to go over patch 13.11 in its entirety before we started the fantasy draft, which was not, I wasn't intending to stream it, to be honest, but we've ended up in a position where it kind of makes sense to do it. So we've got 15 minutes until that draft starts. Wait a minute. Oh, 9:15. Oh, it starts at 9:15, not 9 o'clock? Okay, we have 30 minutes then. Okay, well, in that case, yeah, we are going to start the patch note rundown. Yeah, we're going to start the patch note rundown. So, for everybody contributing to the documentary challenge, Sonic Prisma, Velces, and Zeknul, thank you so much. We are now 21% of the way there, in only the second day, so that's terrifying. You guys, I should never underestimate your ability to do this. Very cool. It's at 9:15. Well, what I'm going to do about it, Sonic, is I'm going to start my patch note rundown, and we're going to take a break if we have to, so. Okay. So I'm just going to do my YouTube intro, right? And I'm actually going to move this over here. Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to the patch 13.11 rundown for Amateur Play. My name is Quinn. Today I'll be going over the patch notes using my system of predictive criteria to assess the impact on lower levels of amateur competition for leagues like Victorious, Aegis, BOL, Metashift, etc. The underserved amateur scene. So, because this is the patch immediately following a major systemic update, there's going to be a lot of follow-up systemic updates, right? And so it's going to be very important that, A, we go over what we got wrong in our predictions last time so that we can be on a more appropriate same page. And B, really look at the champions being adjusted within the greater context of the systemic changes, right? Because we're going to see champions getting buffed who, within the last system, those buffs might look a little scary. So I just have to kind of recalibrate. The predictive criteria is not really set up for, like, tremendous systemic changes. Like we have to use our intuition, right? So, I will do my best to let you know if we have to make any major champion pool updates. We can kind of open a dialogue on it. Truthfully, guys, I am a little low confidence on my assessment of champion power level right now. I need to, actually, hold on, I'm actually gonna add that. Truthfully, I am a little bit behind on updating my knowledge on champion power levels right now, so there's going to be some changes where we have to present them with low confidence, and that's okay as long as we ask the right questions and we all know what has to be explored in the fallout of this patch. So, number 1, Rel. Day 1 Rel is out. The mid-scope video is out. I would highly recommend that you check it out because we're not going to be going in depth about this. The champion has received a lot of changes and a new E. My expectation in amateur play is that she is significantly more pickable. She can pilot her poor matchups more effectively. She is a generically good enchanter with strong synergy points, right? If you're against a lot of tanks, if you have penetration champions, if you have a wombo or dive comp, then Rel can become a very appealing initiator. She has lost a lot of invisible power, right? The healing and the resistance amp, and I'm a little bit concerned that that invisible power going away does actually cause a lower overall win rate for a bit. I also do believe in amateur play, Rel Jungle is legitimate if you use it as a flex pick in drafts, kind of like Nautilus Jungle. So I would encourage you to explore this champion if you have a support player who gravitates towards melees. And if you have jungle players who like playing low econ as well as that type of support player, I would encourage you to look into this, like, just so you can maybe use her flex potential. Expectation is probably, like, just as good as a champion like Amumu, and at lower levels of competition, engaged champs usually end up being very, very good, even when they're not theoretically perfect. So, I would anticipate Rel's power level to be reasonably fine, and she is available for your champion pools. Okay, Akali. Akali is gaining 10 damage to Q at all ranks, which, from the perspective of a burst champion, does not matter because that doesn't hit our threshold of 40 damage. From the threshold of sustained damage, in that case, we would say something along the lines of DPS champ getting a DPS change CAC W. We never really care about that. That said, we ran into some trouble on like 13.8, 13.9, where it was inappropriate for me to start saying that, and I just have not prioritized fixing that system. With my current knowledge, I would not expect this to change Akali pick conditions, nor would I expect this to change her presence in anyone's pools or drafts. So we will, for now, ignore this change. Also, I have to, get my OneNote set up. And speaking of DPS criteria, like, Amumu is the reason that we have to be a little low confidence about saying DPS change, DPS champ, CAC W, right? Because, we looked at that and said, huh. What? Hold on. I completely zoned out. I'm sorry. I said I was tired, right? Akali buff probably only matters if it makes her wave clear better. Oh, thank you for checking me at the door on my wave clear, right? Okay, let's grab a Mumu. Excuse me. Ooh. So last patch, Amumu's base damage got flattened, so the rank 1 W was much more effective, and it became more appealing to give him, it became more appealing to invest points into this. That's not correct either. Excuse me, sorry, I'm struggling right now. Give me a sec. So on 13.9, Amumu's base damage got flattened to 10 at all ranks, which would obviously impact his clear speed and clear health, something that we don't usually factor in too much for like the Platinum, Diamond, and below range of amateur play. That's usually not a super relevant strength. And this is an out-of-threshold increase to percent max health DPS, but Amumu very blatantly became much stronger, right? So there is something at play that we did not factor in. I suppose what we didn't factor in is just the fact that this is his primary and technically only source of damage, right? Like, Tantrum is dealing damage, but this is his only source of, like, reliable sustained damage. And so that's increasing. I wouldn't expect it to have made a huge difference, though. That's the thing. I wouldn't have expected it to make a huge difference. So I have to stand by my guns, and I have to assume the thing that spiked Amumu's win rate was a combination of clear speed and just mid to late game DPS against durable targets, right? And so logically, the only thing that this would change is clear speed and clear health, which is a relevant factor for a jungler's power, but not relevant enough for amateur play, like below Masters, to care. So this will be power impacting in solo queue in terms of win rates, but if we didn't assess the last change to be big, and we can logic our way into assuming this isn't going to be big by those criteria, then we should not make any dramatic changes in response to this. What's up, Paradox? Yeah, no, holy, it's so not. I miss the healing, I really do. I miss it already, but I'm excited. Okay, Aphelios is getting nerfed. Their reasoning as to why they're nerfing him is weird. They're like, why does he have so much damage to dominate early lane when he also scales a lot? Haha. It's because he's a tempo champ, and if you fall behind on him at any point, then he falls off a cliff, and it's really hard to play him. So he's supposed to just leverage consistent power with range limitations. But even though the reasoning's a little weird, this is the kind of change where we do look at a champion who outputs a lot of sustained damage with a tiny, tiny love tap to it. Minus 3 AD at max rank is not going to do anything. Aphelios is effectively unchanged. Yeah, Rel can Q into W. She can Q flash into W. She has more power in her dismount W thanks to her new E, right? She has options. It's so exciting that she has options. She can press her E on Hecarim and give him a shit ton of AD for fun. Yeah, pretty much. You aren't as restricted. Okay, so with Aurelion Sol, I've been through my whole spiel at this point many, many, many times over where top-level counterplay was developing. And he's just still super oppressive at lower levels where he doesn't just get clapped for existing, right? I don't need to say any of that again. We just need to face the reality that Aurelion Sol in unskilled play is fundamentally very broken, hard to punish without great coordination and setup, right? It is what it is. And what they're attempting to do to him is they are attempting to make his E a little more restrictive. They are trying to make it more expensive for early farming. And they are reducing the damage. How many E's would Aurelion Sol get in a typical lane phase? Assuming no mana regen. Assuming no mana regen and no mana items, which is a very unrealistic scenario, and also no other spells, right? Aurelion Sol would be allowed to cast 10 singularities. Of course, not factoring in our potential to invest points into it. So, but we don't just have 10 raw singularities. We are spending mana on our Q to farm our waves, but, let's say we spend half of that mana on our Breath of Light, which is a gross oversimplification of the whole thing, right? Then we can go down to 5 singularities, right? That's a 5-wave sequence, which does miss our Cannon Wave, where we might have had access to it before. In my 4-minute cycles. I don't really know what 4-minute cycles are, to be honest. I'm just thinking. How many waves in the sequence, right? Oh, what I'm failing to factor in is cheaper Lost Chapter, right? And Aurelion Sol is not always on Rod of Ages at this level, right? His estimation of how long between each back on average is about 4 minutes. Definitely can be a lot more frequent in, like, top lane, but that sounds reasonable enough to me. Because that would be playing out 1:30. That would be playing out 6 waves. That makes sense, yeah. Okay, so how do I assess mana changes? God. Okay, I have very poor mana predictors, and I am so lazy and need to fix that, right? This is a DPS champion, and we're not really expecting that to make a difference in terms of champion combat. We are maybe expecting that to make a difference in terms of wave clear, but without actually seeing the impact. I am not capable of just looking at the numbers and understanding the impact of that on wave clear. In my gross oversimplification, it would appear that Aurelion Sol may struggle to play out a sequence with 2 cannon waves in it, where, or like before, he may have been more capable. Which is yet another instance of us nerfing Aurelion Sol successfully, right? But I am now at the point where I truly believe that no matter how many times we nerf this champion, if the level of play is unskilled, and any sub-masters amateur is going to be unskilled enough to let him thrive. You know, if the situation is right and the level of play is unskilled and we struggle to punish him early before he just becomes a problem, then he's going to be relevant. I actually think he's another Zeri condition like that at this point for lower level. So while my predictors may be poor and it's hard to assess the impact of this, I would expect Aurelion Sol to still have his place for sure. But we are well beyond the days of coordinated blind pick Acel, I think. Okay. Base mana pool regen over 4 minutes to address how mana is consumed on each character. That's a good formula, I think. Do I think there's any other characters who can scale to the point of being a monster to at least contest him? Yes, I think probably Kayle. Although the interactions between those two champions might be a little bit scuffed. Kayle can bypass the singularity with her speed, so probably Kayle. I think Sona can probably contend with him. You have options to match his scaling. It's just not encouraged to handshake with Acel. Actually, hang on. I'm going to do a second take if that's okay with you guys. Look, just put simply, my predictors for mana pools are very poor, and I'm lazy, and I need to fix that, right? And I look at this, and I don't foresee much difference in champion combat. I foresee a potential difference on farming, and just looking at numbers, I can't fully understand how that will play out. We had a really grossly simplified model that we talked about earlier on the stream, where, you know, maybe this makes it harder for Aurelion Sol to play a 6-wave sequence back on a cannon wave. Like, maybe he only has enough for 5 when before he would have 6. But, like, again, I made so many assumptions with that. I would expect him to be a little bit nerfed, but I now these days I fully believe that Aurelion Sol is the type of champion who, in unskilled play, like Submasters, is always going to be relevant. I think we're well beyond the days of, in amateur play, blind pick Acel. But, you know, I don't think anymore any change is going to keep him down. If the counterplay is developing up there, and we can't use it, and he's been nerfed like 5 times, and he's still a problem, just leave him in your pool. There we go. We have Azir. Okay. We are looking for updates to Azir in general. So where did he settle? Like, what's the deal with Azir right now? When were his last changes? I could have checked in my document too. Azir was last updated in 13.7. Bug fix. Dashing to a soldier while using Conquering Sands to relocate them to maximum distance no longer causes the game to crash. Okay. So where we last left off with Azir, um, he had gotten those like sweeping changes that really cemented a more DPS identity, made his lane phase much harder to execute. It left him in a position where my Azir players have reported he's just really bad against other ranged champions, but scales pretty excellently against melees, right? He is very solidly a DPS champ. And practically no one is playing him, to my knowledge. Except the Azir diehards who will never drop the champion. It is hard to use your Q in lane, for sure. And so, okay, so let's, and his base AA range is it 500 or 525? It's 525. So, they are changing the summon range of Arise to match Azir's auto range to make it feel a little more effective, and the AP ratio is slightly increased, so his DPS is increasing, and DPS is pretty much 100% of what Azir is offering. So, given that it is a ratio change rather than just a small base stat adjustment, this will have a pretty major impact, like, at the end game, right? So that's kind of nice, but that's not his core problem. Conquering Sands, the cooldown is down by 2 seconds at rank 1, and we're going to have rank 1 Q for quite a bit longer. But the mana cost is still very prohibitive. So I will assess this as quality of life, this as rewarding Azir a little bit more for making it to the point of the game where he's already strong, and this still has gates on it, so we're not dramatically changing our opinion on Azir's power, as is the case for most champion changes in this skill bracket, right? Okay, Ivern. This is my favorite jungler. I'm a support role swapped to jungle. I love the complexity of the champion. I love his weirdness. And I am excited to see what they gave me. Now, worth noting that buff sharing is becoming a core mechanic, so it's not a unique strength for Ivern anymore. I'm going to scroll down to that one right away. Buffs will now drop when you have a fully upgraded smite. Otherwise, it works exactly like Ivern's does, right? So for most champions, that's cool. That is a new option at about 20 minutes. Can't really impact lane phase. So you're still going to be donating buffs to your laners during lane phase from time to time, right? For Ivern, that is hugely power impacting because he got that at level 5 and now has to wait for 20 minutes. So that is a lot of invisible power just gone, right? That's problematic. Ivern has received most of the positive changes from the scrapped midscope attempt. This is my favorite for sure. Ivern now has a lot more flexibility in where he ends up with his Q, so that means he can jump directly into your face to use his shield for its utility. That means he can continue DPSing you while you're rooted, because before Ivern would sometimes have to just stop outputting damage, and that felt really bad. The range is a little bit up, and cooldown is now reduced by 50% when used on non-epic monsters. This should allow me to use it a lot more liberally during my clears, which is very good for clear speed, which, again, not a super relevant factor at this level of play. I will tell you that this is tremendous for Ivern players, right? So, W, the bonus damage on hit now applies to allied champions. So this is an injection of damage for Ivern as a whole, as long as his teammates are able to use it. And fortunately for Ivern, it is a strength that his teammates don't have to know how to use. Because the big problem, first of all, I don't fundamentally understand solo queue, so I've been really struggling in this season. I've not been investing time into solo queue, so I can't solve that problem, because problems require time to solve. And then on top of that, Ivern's particular strengths require his teammates to understand how he works, which is not good for a solo queue environment. Truthfully, I'm considering dropping him in solo queue and playing him only in coordinated, even though I love him. But that's an aside. The point is this strength just works, right? This strength just applies to everybody. I believe this is half of his value. Very nice to have for a marksman. And the initial damage is not super high, right? But as we start to get AP, it starts to matter more and more and more, and small amounts of on-hits matter fast, and that's going to be really, really good for our AD carry, right? Brush spawn vision duration, great utility here. Brush duration is longer, or until your team loses vision inside of them. Now, this isn't a change that, to my knowledge, any of the Ivern players were super thrilled about. It does make laning harder on him, but as I was testing it in the PBE, then it does seem like there's a bit of a forgiveness window. You can exit your bush for a brief moment, come back in, not lose it right away, right? Auto attacks empowered with Brushmaker now have a special visual effect to reflect the on-hit damage. It's visual only, sure, whatever. Okay, E. If when the shield detonates, there are no enemies hit by the detonation and the shield has not been broken, the duration is renewed. Now, before it just fully reapplied, that was broken. This is a very small increase to power, but it's still fine for ranged champions. But Ivern doesn't like fundamentally playing around ranged champions, so that's just going to be very small. Daisy gets more attack range. Nice. Daisy gets a very small amount of HP regeneration, which shouldn't move in. This is a lie. Daisy had 419 movement speed because they explicitly didn't want to set it to 420 as a joke, right? But now she's even faster, which is really good because it makes Daisy quite a lot scarier when enemies have boots. Daisy could run down any bootless champion trivially, but once tier 2 boots came online, it was much harder, and Daisy is so much of Ivern's combat power, which he needs for solo queue, right? Attack speed is up, but bonus attack speed at high levels is down, which is fine. It's not very much, and this is, I assume, I don't know if that's a base and a ratio or what, but, And then I thought they were removing this. They were removing this in one version of the change, but this is far better. The slam just has a base damage on top of everything. So Ivern is gaining multiple injections of damage. Actually, yeah, Ivern is gaining quite a lot of damage, effectively. Because not only is he gaining this while skirmishing around his teammates, but Daisy just is more capable of outputting her damage, and so is Ivern, because he doesn't have any windows where he gets to stop DPSing. So whereas I said I would probably stop playing him as much in solo queue, maybe I don't have to do that. Maybe my champion actually deals quite a lot more consistent damage, and now it's a skill issue if I don't succeed on him, right? And it was a skill issue to begin with, let's be real. I was having significant skill issues. The only sad part is the part where Ivern did not receive the 525 auto range that he was promised in the last set of changes. I really would have liked that to come through. I would have liked Ivern to be a bruiser or a marksman while Daisy is a juggernaut, and then on top of that he has enchanter elements, right? That would have been fun. That said, I foresee nothing that changes his pick conditions. I foresee nothing that makes him, like, an appealing pick to run in full ranged comps, right? I still don't want Daisy to be my only melee champion, because this strength is simply not that absurd. I am interested to see if he's more capable of playing a support lane phase, but I would doubt that a little bit. I can, in good faith, call Ivern stronger in terms of damage output, but I can't, in good faith, call him, in general, a stronger champion in a competitive context. Well, hang on. Yeah, so Ivern is stronger in solo queue because his raw damage and consistency is up. But in competitive, the loss of that early buff sharing should hurt a bit. In my Ivern player opinion, I think he's better, and there's no reason to add him to your pool off this. I'm gonna have to test him. I'm gonna have to test him, but I foresee that this damage is actually very, very nice for unskilled play, where you just have to contribute to skirmishes all the time. That's what I think. Chat, we are no longer able to move on. I must get ready for my draft. We're going to have to do this for a little while now. So, we're gonna shift gears. Look, guys, it's Declo. Alright, I'm going to have to just leave my phone open. Okay. So last time I was position 9. When I played this in spring, I was position 9, and everyone was contesting mid laners and 80 carries, and I just grabbed Spica round 1 because I thought Spica off TSM on a new roster that looked very strong was going to pay off for me, and it absolutely did, right? It was such a good pickup there. I need you guys to understand that I am approaching this from the perspective of somebody who doesn't religiously study LCS and who doesn't watch it every single game. So I really can only go off of reputation, unfortunately. I'm not going to be able to make a super informed decision, but I do know who my first pick is going to be. And I have an ordered list of priorities for every role to the best of my knowledge, which I will not be showing you guys. It says Luger's on energy. Wait, really? Uh-oh. I didn't even know. I wasn't following off-season news at all. I didn't even know that Haunter was back. And I didn't know Tenacity was gone. Like, that was unfortunate. I thought we were trying to develop him on 100 Thieves. But either way, this is the draft room, right? We're just waiting. Waiting for how long? Oh, he dipped. I didn't know. Yeah, you guys are gonna have to catch me up. I'm too casual. There is one role in particular that I'm going to be full devaluing because I think anybody I get in that role is going to be good enough for getting me points. I think I might revise my... One of these lists doesn't seem very correct. Okay, I'm allowed to draft in how long? If it doesn't work right away, I'm 22 seconds. I'm just trying to be a little bit vague until the draft actually starts, right? Okay, 10 seconds, guys. Fantasy was fun. Honestly, my team with Tactical and Solo on it last time almost won. I almost placed first, so... Don't judge players by their full performance, right? They just need to put up numbers. I'm a little concerned. Okay, what's happening here? Draft room. Drafting now. Uh-oh. Enter draft. Can I do that? There we go. Okay. So I immediately first picked Berserker. Yeah. I think Prince would have also been a pretty good pickup, but, you know, last split I had Tactical, so this split I want Berserker. Not to flame any player who is noticeably better than me too much. Because, in fairness, he did have some very good weeks for me. But... I don't know where Inferno 92 is. We might get a second pick, like... We might get a second round auto pick, which would be kind of funny. Okay, so I no longer have to care about this. Okay, my phone should not also be making the noise. Stop it. He's gonna get...
Come on!
It's Jensen! I don't know why this thing set Jensen in current year on Dignitas as number 1. Because, like, he's a very good player, to be clear, but I don't think he's, like, the best choice for your points right now. Honestly, based as fuck to pick Stixay this early. Declo, that's not the role I was thinking. I'm gonna turn my phone on to Do Not Disturb. I'm tired of it. Where's my Do Not Disturb? Wait, did I update? There it is. Okay. We might get another auto pick here. Okay, so what I have to care about is that Fudge is gone, Jensen's gone, Vulcan is gone. Honestly, yeah, Vulcan, now that he's on FlyQuest, is a terrifying pickup. Like, that's just an assist farm, no? Before, again, I still had to use Reputation only, and I kind of had to look at Vulcan because there was that one period where he was, like, melee only, and then he very, very much shut me up. So... So Closer gets picked up. I have some hard decisions to make coming up, but maybe somebody can make it easier for me as this plays out. Because, like, I'm going to have a role that gets here, and whoever it is, I'm happy with. But I'm also going to have a position here where I'm a little nervous, maybe? So I just have to track who's taken, right? Double lift gets grabbed. Okay. So yeah, 80 carry is completely irrelevant for me to track now. Who does Sonic want? The fantasy is just a fun thing to do, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes a week. Just submit your bans, think about it for a bit, just see how... Like, it makes the games a little more fun. Someone lost me points once just by, like, sprinting it into Fountain on a 1 game at the end. I can't remember who it was, but I was so mad. It was, like, a perfect game. Unforgiven / Danny. Alright, who does Reggie pick? Speaka, good. Okay, yeah, Speaka's gone. Fair, valid. You know what's funny? I had, like, giga high priority on Busio last time when he was, like, a super, super exciting prospect. I still think he's a good player. I still think, like, people are so hard on him for no reason. Because, like, you know, we want our native talent, but we don't want to give them the space to grow, I guess? Anyway, I still don't want to pick him here because he will sap my points by dying on purpose for good plays. And that's... Which, when you factor in his chance of dying for bad plays, too, is scary for... scary for fantasy. Unless he's just leveled up like crazy and I regret not having him, because there's a genuine chance of that happening too. Blabber and Jojo immediately. Wow. Okay. So, mid is now starting to get pinched a little bit more. Quid, Santorin. Okay, so there's Impact. Impact would be the literal only reason I would pick a top laner here. So I think... This is hard. Oh, wait, there's a really, really obvious... Oh, this is a hard decision. I can pick River right now, or I can grab my choice of support, which is probably Sven who he treats. But... Sven did so well for me last split, but then that keeps me bound to a few teams, but there are teams that are highly likely to perform. If I don't take that, if I take that and I get my choice of that, then... No, I can make that work. I think I'm going to take a gamble. I'm going to take a gamble because there's one player here who... I think is going to go under the radar a little bit. I don't want big dickerish. My strategy is any top laner I can get is going to be good enough for points. There's a few top laners that are noticeably above everyone else. As soon as they're gone, no one is bad. So that was what happened to me last split too. That was also my strategy then. I ended up with solo, and even solo did really, really well for me on TSM. So I'm totally satisfied to take whatever top laner comes my way. Now let's just track the rest of it. So tactical's gone. I mean, I don't have to care about support anymore, and I don't have to care about mid anymore because I just immediately grabbed Vikla. And I'm spread only... Yeah, I've only got 2 teams, and I'd like more teams. Just kind of hedge my bets a little bit, right? The top laners are going fast. So that's what? That's Licorice gone. That's Summit gone. That's Someday gone. That's Revenge gone. River's gone for jungle. Contracts is gone. How insane is it that he got River? I almost took him away. I almost got him. I was very, very close to taking that. Palafox and Ignar. What do you have? Wait, Vulcan, Luger, River. That is not bad for you with the first pick support. Like... with ADC being the first pinch pool. Like, that is not bad. Although, I wonder if it was... literally the only reason you would take Luger is to stop yourself from getting tactical, I think. Oh, Luger's FBI? Never mind. That's definitely not bad. Like, because, again, Luger's not bad, but the 80 carries are all taken, right? Okay, so Pioshik is gone. Boogie is gone. No! It auto-picked Kenvi! Okay, so I get my choice of top laners. So I can stay true to Heroes of the Storm and pick Rich. Or, Big Dokes is still here. So I think that's probably... what I get, right? Because my options are Dokla, Rich, Haunter, and Solo. I thought Kenvi would be a steal. I thought he would definitely get all the way down here. I love supporting Academy talent, and... I thought he'd be a steal. Okay, so... Dokla, Rich. Dokla, Rich. Dokla, Rich. Oh, Dignitas? Okay, Dokla. And then, what, Jungle is like... Yeah, it's just Armeo, so... I mean, Armeo's on EG, so EG's got a decent roster this split, right? We should be fine, I think. Getting Chime that late is pretty good. I'm really happy with my roster. I am really, really, really happy with my roster. I've got representation in C9 and FlyQuest and I mean, so hold on. What exactly is EG the split? EG, Ayla, Armeo, Jojo Pyun. Where else is EG? Jesus Christ. Yeah, that... No, I'm really confident in this one. The only thing I would have definitely liked Kenvi over Armeo, just like, you know, because whenever we have academy talent like that who's coming up, I think it's nice to take a gamble on them. Tomo got picked before Luger, FBI, Tactical, Yawn, and Wild Turtle. But Regdor obviously has, like, a plan, and he knows something, right? I mean, this dude's on stage with these players, so maybe he knows something we don't. Right? He hears the comms. He knows what's, right? I mean, so what's Dig this time? Dig is Rich and Santorin, Jensen, and their bot lane is who? Tomo and Diamond. I'm not feeling it. No more Narmut. We have a Illidan main 47 here, though. So Rich wasn't Illidan main, right? Illidan Hanzo, something like that. Like, I don't know. I'm actually so happy he's in NA just because I like Rich's storyline, but all right, we're good, right? He's basically Faker. He's pretty much Faker. So whose rosters are scary? Declo got Vulcan, Luger, River, Balulu, and Solo. Honestly, I think this is probably a dark horse roster. Sonic got Unforgiven, Eminus, who he contracts Rich. That's probably going to perform. Depends on how Energy does, I guess, right? And right, it's FBI, not Luger, because things are all messed up. So, yeah, FBI open up, right? Speakatomo, Busio, Insanity, Haunter. Dude, okay, wait. Regdor got TSM mid, and TSM mid is the biggest gamble on my list. I wrote a note to myself. I'm like, stay far away from TSM mid, because we have no idea when it's going to be Insanity, when it's going to be Ruby, when it's going to be Phoenix. Like, we don't know anything about how they're running the team. So Insanity is probably good, right? I mean, like, we've got our native talent coming up, becoming better, going to give us some points in fantasy leagues, right? Palafox, Insanity, stuff like that. But this was just such a gamble, this one right here. So Double Lift, Blabber, Revenge, Palafox, Diamond. That one could go hard. We're in Zeri Yumi oh, yeah. Yeah, so I picked Berserker because we're entering the season on Zeri Yumi meta, and Berserker just gets pentakills, right? I did not see the Energy roster announcement, no. Wait, wouldn't it be funny to do, like, fantasy amateur leagues? Yeah, Triforce Zeri Yumi. The fun version. Triforce Helia Zeri Yumi is the issue. Like, ugh. And what's disgusting is that Yumi wasn't in a competitively broken state before Helia came out, right? You would just look at Yumi and you'd be like, yep, that sure is a champion who does all right things, but now she does Helia things, and that's a problem. No, they didn't. That's so funny. I love that. Okay, I'm ready to move on. We're gonna go back to our patch note rundown, shall we? Um... Okay, so Jinx is receiving an attack speed growth reduction. Now, noticeably, that's not an attack speed ratio reduction, which would be immediately crippling, and we'd look at that and say, oh, bad nerf, bad nerf. But given that it's attack speed growth, I think this is probably just like a small adjustment to low attack speed Stormrazor builds, right? I'm just gonna come out and say that I was wrong in my 1310, but not completely wrong, right? I theorized that BF Zeal Infinity Edge would be the way to go. I failed to factor in that that's too slow for some compositions, and especially for solo queue, and that Stormrazor, even though I predicted would be a third option, just had the most effective passive compared to its peers as a rush item. So even though it didn't look like it was going to be optimized, just the system has changed. So if this is at all power impacting for Jinx, I do not believe it will be power impacting on BF Zeal Infinity Edge. Which does mean that our pick conditions are a little bit scarier, because it would mean if this reads like a lot, it would mean that Jinx is a weaker laner and, you know, doesn't work as well with the meta builds. That said, it's a growth statistic, and it's probably not worth reading too much into. And I would tentatively make the DPS claim again and say we don't change too much dramatically. But those are just my concerns with my newer understanding of the system. You know, now that it's had time to settle, and we can't know fully the impact of this without seeing it in action, right? So I would expect that Jinx is still very good in amateur pools, right? And it's very easy to pick her if you're a bot-centric team, but I would like that little asterisk on there that we might have to start playing around. Bye, Sonic. Okay, so Callista is getting a lot of changes. Now, where did we leave Callista in our last assessment of the champion? I believed that Callista was in a state where she was solidly okay if Callista would enable the strategy that your team is playing, right? She wasn't good, and she wasn't bad. Which meant that Callista players could absolutely make her work, right? But it required a no-throw aggro approach with supplemental carries, and basically it's just she takes a very unorthodox support pool to fully and properly enable, right? Now, evidently, that way of playing has become weaker, right? It has... Let me think about this for a moment. Callista would have been impacted by the new itemization system. How? Rageblade would have become more effective on her. It would have been a much better rush. Oh, she lost shield bow. She's one of the champs who lost shield bow and doesn't have any compensation. That's the issue. Ugh. So, yeah, that would make it quite a bit harder for her to snowball, wouldn't it? Uh-oh. So Callista's auto attacks are feeling weak at the moment due to the 90% total AD ratio and missing during vision loss. We noticed Callista was really hurting after 1310. We're targeting some pretty large buffs aimed at usability and durability for her, which does compensate for the loss of shield bow. This changes to base AD, Q, and E. Keep her damage output roughly equal to before. Okay. So her health is up by 25, which is not in any lethal change ranges. We assess this against burst, like with the same threshold as her burst. It doesn't hit, so it's not pick condition relevant, right? Health regeneration up a bit, nice. Health regeneration growth up, nice. Attack damage base is down, but, you know, we have auto attacks that deal all of our damage, so that's a big deal, right? And attack damage growth is a little bit down, so we're getting less raw AD and would have to get more from our items, right? Callista's basic attacks can no longer miss if we lose vision, and her, again, as we mentioned, 100% total AD. She's just a normal champion who gets normal value from normal things. Awesome. I think this should have been gone a long, long time ago. Noticeably, when you are building high AD, that's also an increase to objective DPS before the moment of the rend, which is absolutely critical for Callista's strength as a champion. Pierce, the ratio is going up by 5% AD. Okay, not a super relevant change, but it is definitely nice. Rend, 8 seconds all ranks, so Rend is more usable without resets. And the physical damage per extra stack, the base is actually noticeably down, but the ratio is smoothed out. So this is minus 10 damage per auto attack. But it's also, what's the math on that? It's just assuming we're at full base. It's only plus 2 per auto attack before we buy any new AD. So actually, Callista's dealing less damage before her first AD component, which is interesting. Callista's dealing less damage before her first AD component. However, she can tolerate more no reset rend trading and scales better. Actually, how much does this compensate? 66 times 0.406 is 26 damage, so 61 times 0.45 is 27 damage, so that doesn't compensate, so it's really in ratios, right? Okay. So, what does this mean? Callista is losing first sequence damage and is not gaining relevant enough durability. In exchange, the moment of her rend is better later. Her auto attacks as a whole scale more effectively. That's an interesting concept. Do we end up in a position where Callista's early team fighting still outputs relevant damage? Maybe we do. Bare minimum, Callista is still Callista's more capable of executing her primary strength of objective DPS and being an unorthodox utility carry, but losing some early bully potential is not good for that game plan. Now, my crackhead theory is I think Callista support is a very, very big beneficiary of these changes. And Callista support was low-key one of the better marksman supports in the last marksman support meta. Like, once that concept got exposed to me, I was very happy with it. And, you know, big-ass ratio adjustments are long-term good for lethality builds. So I'm actually interested to see if this does anything for top lane, because it's a 5% increase. Doubtful, right? I don't know. I'm not expecting Callista AD carry to be much stronger right away. But where I would be proven wrong is if she just happens to scale more effectively now off of Ginsu's plus some item with AD. Because if she does, if Callista doesn't tickle you in mid to late game teamfights, if Callista actually can deal damage in teamfights, that changes her identity, and that makes her a much better champion, right? Assuming no identity change, do not add Callista to your pool. Do not bring her back into your pool. Wait to see if that identity change occurs. Hi, Steven. Yeah. Here's our fantasy draft. I'm very happy with my roster. Dude, how did you guys give me Berserker and Vikla? And Sven? Like, come on. Okay, Rek'Sai was crippled by the removal of Prowler's Claw. That champion was such a weirdo, and I wish she had been less of a cheese pick, right? She scales like ass, and she just needed the most instantaneous murder spike to accelerate the game, right? So now Prowler's dash is gone, and that's very bad for Rek'Sai. And Rek'Sai was supposed to be a bruiser the whole time, and she should be building Stridebreaker now. So how are they going to empower Bruiser Rek'Sai builds? Well, to empower Bruiser Rek'Sai builds, we're probably going to need to, empower our scaling a little bit. But let's see. Tremor Sense refresh rate is up. That's good for quality of life. That's good for gaining information. Heal with Maximum Fury. It's now 15 plus 20 for every 3 levels. So the base is long-term lower, I would imagine. Yeah, because that's plus 120. So yeah, that's 135 max base, so it's lower, but we also get 2% plus 2% maximum HP for every 3 levels. That means if we exit a fight, we're healing a lot. We can re-enter fights now, no? So the maximum fury would be 14% max health, but that's level 18. That's not... That's good, but that's not, like, Warmog's good, right? That's not, like, exit a fight, have a fast Warmog's, which would 100% change your viability. That alone would be very strong. Okay, I mean, that's still power positive, because it demonstrably changes the way we can approach our mid-game fights. So, yeah, okay. What have we got? With Triumph DD. Oh yeah, Triumph is not negotiable. Right. DD, I don't like DD. DD's post-fight healing is not good. DD just makes it easier to survive in the fight. Just ask Night Train his thoughts, our sustained damage is quite a bit higher with a 2-second cooldown on Queen's Wrath. That is excellent. Buff duration is shorter. Basic attacks now refresh the buff duration, but we no longer end it prematurely to immediately get our cooldown back. I mean, I guess that's pretty reasonable. We don't need that effect anymore if we have a 2-second cooldown, which if I remember correctly, only starts ticking after the buff has expired. So we have 2 seconds downtime. We're not going to have it permanently up. 2 seconds downtime is definitely something we can endure if we're diving with a friend. That's good sustained damage, okay. Still not team fight level, right? Queen's Wrath reveal duration, that's quality of life. And W Unburrow, this is no change in power level. Targeted range increased to match untargeted range. That's just a removal of an obscure skill check. So all that we actually get is a decent chunk of max HP healing, which does change the ways we can approach certain fights. Does let us re-enter, and we have a noticeable increase to DPS. I would be very surprised if that turned Rek'Sai into a competent team fighter by any means. If we are on... We're still going to be snowball reliant. We're still going to be early gank reliant. We're going to be better at killing durable units in small skirmishes. We're going to be better at dealing objective DPS, which is a very important strength for a jungler who struggles to team fight. Our ability to one-shot doesn't change. I'm just going through some scenarios in my head right now. Um... This is actually potentially power negative if you can't get all 3 hits off. That actually stunts our DPS, and actually, now that we don't have this, that's maybe an issue. So that's actually a pain point. I mean, she's... I don't think this is enough to create some super meaningful Rek'Sai pick conditions, right? She's going to remain a fundamentally aggro champ. She is probably a little more capable of playing out actual large skirmish dive scenarios. I think that's probably accurate. She's still going to have a weird pseudo-assassin playstyle. But, you know, alright, so this is good in some fringe teamfight cases, and this is really good for objective DPS, and so objectively she is a little bit stronger, but we didn't see her in most levels of play with Prowlers, and so I sincerely doubt we will see her now. Although if you're a Rek'Sai diehard, like, your champion is probably a little more playable again, but I probably wouldn't rate her very highly on paper. Which is a shame, because I like Rek'Sai. Speaking of Prowlers champs, Renekton, who is receiving 2 seconds off his E at all ranks, which does not get this into an in-combat spammable mobility range, so it's not a cooldown change that we would really go crazy over. We also have Dominus becoming more available, and its magic damage per tick is going up, especially at later levels. So what this does is it actually cements Renekton as more of an anti-engage champion, which is his most consistent theoretical niche. This won't empower his lane phase. This won't empower a tremendous amount of his scaling. It's just going to make him better in, like, bait and punish, which Submasters Amateur consistently struggles to execute on, and so I would expect very minimal change, and we're not happier with Renekton. Right? Do I think that has a W impact on W or E max order? What, you mean like W first? W before E? Because we still don't... Well, Slice and Dice still deal a lot of damage if you're close. Right? I didn't even realize how insane Renekton's ratios were. I personally cannot know, and you will have to catch me at a time when I can become better informed on that, and when my brain is less tired, so I'm sorry. Okay, and Twisted Fate is just getting pick a card, 6 seconds, all ranks, which is yet another wave clear buff to the champion, which is another roaming buff to the champion, which is another patch where we have to look at this champion and say, oh god, is he getting on the map more consistently? If the answer is yes, Twisted Fate becomes quite good. That's always what happens whenever we see Twisted Fate's Q or W get buffed in a way that empowers red card. That's always our thought, right? And... I mean, rapid fire changes were not actually good for Twisted Fate, technically. The item getting more expensive is pretty damning for his power now that I think about it. He needed that cheap spike. Ooh. But I guess we're in a weird situation where our build almost becomes like whatever mythic you value, and then like Lich RFC static in solo queue? That's performant? What? Huh. Okay, either way, that's it. We checked Twisted Fate's Wave Clear, but we acknowledge that in the context of rapid fire buffs, it's probably unlikely that in the context of rapid fire buffs, which were nerfs for Twisted Fate, we probably do not expect him to be much stronger. Okay. I'm gonna use the washroom because I've been here for a bit. I'll be right back. Okay, so in this section, we acknowledge systemic changes are most likely to change our strategies in amateur play. They're significantly more likely to change our strategies in our champion pools than champion changes. We also have to get ready to assess what I said last time on 1310 and just see what was accurate, right? So, Ardent Censor. Ardent Censor became quite good. I still personally advocate for Redemption over Ardent Censor in the general case, but it is genuinely an appealing second item, and the on-hit is nuts. They have chosen to target its attack speed rather than its on-hit. They have flattened it so it doesn't hit as high highs, which does mean I expect the item to stay quite strong because the on-hit value itself is actually the appealing part of the item, right? Now that Censor's problems have been mostly solved and its on-hit was buffed, yeah, I'm not expecting this to nerf the item enough to, deal with this. They're clearly targeting this because of Ginsu's really profiting from that attack speed and, like, the full-on hit builds, but, yeah. We're fine. We're gonna keep building this. Duskblade. The bonus ability damage is going up, and the health threshold is also going up, which makes it even better on its previously discussed niche on poke champions. I do believe I was correct about Duskblade of Drakthar, that it, like, where it belongs on poke champions and on assassins who play out longer fights but don't need the durability of Eclipse, something like Kiana. But Ghostblade was just choking everything out because it was so blatantly overpowered. So now, when we're playing, like, Varus, Ezreal, champs like that, we're going to be gravitating more towards Duskblade than Ghostblade for sure, assuming Ezreal's on his ER build, right? Echoes of Helia. The healing per shard is going down to 80, and the damage per shard is going down to 180. So it's minus 20, sure, at max ranks. Noticeably, it does not start scaling until level 6. So the value at every single level is down, right? It is very, 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 very good. It is so blatantly overtuned that the only possible way I can perceive this change, I don't even have to go into it, right? The only way I can perceive this change is that excessive output is being brought in line, and now we assess it as a baseline excellent item, and anything happening beyond that point is when we start to care. So, even though the value at every single level is down, I don't think we care. Gale Force, yeah. It says, despite popular opinion, we did not expect Gale Force to be the generically best option, right? We did not expect it to be as good as it was. Is that 40 damage difference at max rank? At max level? Yes, at max level, that is 40 damage difference. But keep in mind the frequency of proc, right? Keep in mind the frequency of proc. Even that, no, it was so overtuned that even that is something we can survive, right? Okay, yeah, so we didn't expect Gale Force to be as strong as it was. We expected it to compete more heavily against IE and PD. In reality, its strength of curving into itself and coming online early was very, very relevant, and there were more champions than we expected who just valued the sheer assassination potential, right? Like, we didn't imagine Jin would be gravitating to Gale Force right away, but it just dealt so much damage that it was very appealing for his squishy annihilating pattern, right? So we go down to 200% critical strike chance, and on its scaling. So it is at, maximum level, maximum crit, losing 50 base damage, which then would have gotten amplified even further. So in reality, 50 base damage plus 10% is 5, so it's losing 55 damage. It's losing 55 damage on its own at best. Just by that scaling. And of course, it's losing more damage than just that 55 because it's also amping, obviously, the base, right? So it's losing more than 55 damage. Doesn't change the build path, doesn't change the curve, doesn't change the... Yeah, it doesn't change the value of the early spike, and so this is, again, a nerf we would perceive as an item that is blatantly too strong, being brought a little more in line. And on the champions we did not expect to be running Gale Force, which would be, like, Jin, who it sounded like the Infinity Edge would be kind of a tough thing to give up. We will reassess those particular champions, but the melees are still going to be building Gale Force, and they're not going to stop. And Lucian is still going to be generically building Gale Force on his assassination playstyles, right? And Akshan is still going to be valuing Gale Force in most cases. Like, that's not going to change just from this damage. No, they're trying to weaken it on Yasuo and Yone. See, they're cutting this down, right? Because Yasuo and Yone got this online very immediately. But yeah, it is too strong on Yasuo and Yone right now. How crazy is that? They didn't want Infinity Edge. Okay, Kraken Slayer, an item that I expected to see very consistent play on, like, third item in general. Second item if you're not, like... Yeah, but in reality, it curved very awkwardly, and its numbers were very undertuned. So my original theories was that this would become one of our default second items, and... Sorry, I shouldn't be talking while adjusting my mic. All that, yeah. So my original theories is that this would become our default second item, and it would generically beat PD, but just the appearance of Stormrazor in our early builds kind of complicated this. And the fact that we need BF Zeal rather than BF Noon to get that early Infinity Edge spike online meant Kraken Slayer had no place over PD in that context. And theoretically, Kraken should still be competing for a slot as a rush item now that the system is better understood, but the numbers were too undertuned for that. So, the damage type going from magical to physical means that our penetration works on Kraken Slayer, and so it will simply deal more damage. Now, the total AD ratio is buffed, the AP ratio is buffed, that's not very relevant, but the base damage at all levels is just going up by a lot, and so that's very, very, very compelling, right? Now that we get the Noon Quiver system a bit more, we will have to reassess this next to Stormrazor, which is coming up later in the patch notes, so we will leave Kraken Slayer for now. Moonstone Renewer, which should have found a home on Soraka and Sona and sometimes Melio, released undertuned. So they are giving it some numbers, and I don't think we are going to change our perception on who should have been building this. It was just choked out by Helia, so we will see if it is still choked out by Helia. Probably not on Soraka. Navori Quick Blades has fallen pretty far behind, probably because everyone's on Gale, right? They are reducing its ability haste, they are increasing its AD, they are adding a BF sword to the build path rather than a Caulfield... No, not rather than a Caulfield's Warhammer, rather than a pickaxe. Huh. So you can still... That's a lot of early AD. Still doesn't curve super cleanly into itself because it still needs the attack speed just like Infinity Edge, so that could be a bit awkward, but, I mean, if we've got Storm into this, we've got Kraken into this, if Kraken's a compelling option, then sure. They're basically just reducing excessive haste, and they're giving it more damage, and I'm, again, not going to read too far into this because, you know, it's Quick Blades. It's a mythic that is appropriate for some champions. And if Gale Force is not choking things out, then we'll find an opportunity to build Quick Blades. So, gosh, there's a lot of changes that can be boiled down to, like, we understood this on paper, but items were choking out other items, or just released with wrong numbers or something. So, like, yeah. Numbers probably fixed, sure. Runon's Hurricane, this item was nuts. I sorely underestimated how powerful 30 on hit would be in, like, choking out PD even if you can't get the bolts. Now it's only offering the on hit of the recurve bow, which is still very effective, but should probably kind of bring it back into its niche a little more, so PD has more chance to shine. Wits has a little more chance to shine, I guess. Yeah. Static Shiv is a garbage item. How are they fixing it? They are increasing its base damage, so it just immediately outperforms in terms of base. Well, it did already. So, Static Shiv couldn't compete with Stormrazor primarily because it was very trivial for Stormrazor's TAD ratio to just outvalue the base damage of Static Shiv, and that is still generally true. Where Shiv did find a home was on hybrid champions or, like, some weirdo endgame AP augmenting thing. I like Vhagar was building it. I don't think it's optimal. It would have made sense on Kayle. It would have made some sense on Katarina. It would have made some sense on, I had something else in mind and it slipped my mind right away. I do not expect that plus 20 base damage is enough to bring it into generic marksman viability. Although I need to stop drawing conclusions on Shiv. This is 2 patches in a row now where I drew conclusions on Shiv before I saw what happened to Stormrazor. Okay, Stormrazor, the total AD ratio is down 5%. Okay, we can survive that. That doesn't matter. The base damage is down 10, and the AD is up by 5. Okay. What's the actual... So it's hard to assess the actual impact of this because this will matter more and more and more throughout the game. I don't think 10 damage makes a real difference for any early game situations. Do you? Like... Or at least, like, middle lane phase rush conditions. So... Okay. It is obviously better as a 3rd or 4th item if you can get away with it. Right? If you can delay it, it is obviously more effective later into the game. That was true last patch, that's true this patch. It was rushed because honestly, the movement speed, I hard underrated. That is a very, very, very potent effect of this item. It is very strong for enabling trades, especially on champs like Xayah. And that's not going away, that's not getting nerfed. It's still a compelling rush. Versus Kraken Slayer. Kraken Slayer immediately will be dealing more damage, or it will be dealing more DPS. Kraken is appearing to be a more compelling competitor against Stormrazor. Okay. So Stormrazor's movement speed is not going away. Stormrazor's kiting potential is not going away. Kraken Slayer, if you have the means to build just raw damage, cool. It's a real conversation that I can't solve right now on every champion, but it's not, yeah, that's likely where we end up, because the difference between 15 base and 35 base is very, very significant, right? So, you know what? No, I think I can solve this. I personally would lean Kraken Rush over Stormrazor Rush in the generic case. But of course, the value of its movement speed, now that we've seen it in action, is not to be understated in terms of, like, how it sets up trades and how it may keep you safe, right? So in a champion like Jinx, no Stormrazor, we can actually go back to how we were talking about her nerfs. I no longer think they matter because she just has the option to rush a Kraken with a better stat profile than Stormrazor for her. So she'll be pretty much unaffected. We'll make per champion decisions. Not dead as a rush, better on 3rd. We're going to repeat ourselves if we keep going. Versus Static Shiv. The base damage is obviously better. We're never rushing a Static Shiv. Ever. If I'm on my hands and knees begging you to not do it. So there's no first item comparison to make, but on third, fourth item comparison, I still expect the champion stacking AD to value Stormrazor more than Static Shiv. So then we are capable of drawing our conclusions. Cool. I think Kraken's better. I think Stormrazor's fine. I think Shiv's conditions don't change. Awesome. Okay, Yumu's was busted. So broken. So they are reducing its stack generation, so it's harder to accumulate in combat. You know, because champions like Hecarim were building this item, and they were just getting it procced multiple times in a fight, which is not what I expected. It's really not what I expected. But it happened. It's losing some haste. Sure, whatever. This is what matters. Thank goodness the penetration is not nearly as extreme in the early game. It's still a 21 pen item early, so it's still going to be quite excellent. But hopefully it's not as meta-defining. And with that, we've now been through everything. So, honestly, in terms of new conclusions, there's not very much in this patch. It's mostly numbers tuning, so stuff that should have been true but wasn't because of numbers is now true. And there are not a lot of, like, really significant pool changes, right? To recap, the big things that we have to kind of watch, I'd like to assess Gale Force's performance, and that'll change some itemization decisions. We're going to have to assess Stormrazor's performance, and that'll change some itemization decisions. We're going to have to assess Kallista's new identity, if it has changed, if she does scale better. That changes things, but if she doesn't, she's probably not stronger at all. And then, yeah, I'm happy with Ivern. The new Rel is really just the big thing, right? Rel is like the thing to change pools over, if we assess her to be strong. So, yeah, I mean, I hope you're settling into the new way of playing. I think I'm settled in pretty nicely to marksman itemization. I have been hearing that the actual raw 1v1 in solo lanes is more important, because it turns out the roam changes kind of went both ways. I'm hearing that it's harder for supports to actually get to mid lanes. I am wondering if that's only true at top level, where people aren't constantly making stupid decisions. So, I'm still trying to feel out how many of those minion changes just straight up don't matter for us in Submasters. That's where I am right now. So, yeah, just keep practicing. Make those small itemization changes, make these small investigations into a couple of champions, and then you will be all set to keep doing what you were doing. Does anybody have any final questions here? Why do I have 78 messages? So I'm just clearing out some pings. Okay. I'm feeling like garbage, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna get ready to play some Tears of the Kingdom, so I'll be right back.